Hi everyone, good to see you again. How are you doing so far? We have passed the first quarter of the semester. Have you enjoyed this class so far? We talked about the counselor's identity was a kind of the orientation to this profession. The second, we talked about some history and credential of counseling. And lecture 3 and 4, we reviewed major counseling theories from 4 different perspectives. And today, we will talk about the counseling skills. So if you look at the objective here, I put down 3 different objectives for today. The first one is identify components of nonverbal behavior. When we communicate with client, we have 2 different ways of exchanging our thought and feeling. The first one is verbal communication by speaking, by using language. However, the other component of communication, which is nonverbal behavior, actually is more dominant than verbal communication. So we will talk about one of the examples of nonverbal communication by Jared Egan. He developed the kind of acronym SOLER system. So we will learn some nonverbal behavior technique by learning his acronym. The second one, we want to understand and apply basic and advanced counseling skills. You know, if we think about the counseling, the communication is the core and essential part in relationship between counselor and client, and counseling skills are very important techniques that we want to develop as a counselor. So we will talk about some basic skills such as reflection, question. That may be some basic skill. In addition to them, we could use some questioning and summarizing and paraphrasing, that types of basic counseling skill. And also we want to learn some advanced skills such as confrontation, interpretation, and some silence use and some other related advanced skills as well. So that will be the second objective for today. The third one, we also talk about some development, the counseling process based on 5 different stages of counseling. So we will talk about the procedure, and we will talk about explain each stage. Okay, as I mentioned, we will talk about some nonverbal behavioral counseling techniques. And it was suggested by one of the counseling psychologists, Jared Egan. He made the acronym starting with S. S means in this case is face the other person squarely. The squarely means kind of straight. Okay, for example, he look at me squarely. That means he look at straightly. So in this case, we want to face the client in a squarely way. Why? Because we want to look at their nonverbal message. Because when we talk with the client is showing their feelings and thought through the whole body and facial expression and body posture and all kinds of nonverbal behavior. So we don't want to lose any message and clue from the client. So when we look at and when we face the other squarely, like the first picture, we could identify their nonverbal message better than the second picture if we face a little bit a different way. So he's recommended the first kind of sitting method is better than the second one. The second acronym was open posture. Let's take a look at two different pictures. I was trying to show some open posture, body posture, and second one, I crossed my arm. What difference do you see from these pictures? How about the second one? Yeah, the second one, the counselor looked like the counselor is trying to kind of judge or interpret a little bit negative. But the first one is open posture, make the client feel more comfortable. So we want to show this type of body posture as a counselor. So that will be better in helping the client. The third one, lean toward. I try to the contrast the two different body posture. The first one is I leaned a little forward and toward to the client, but the second one is I leaned backward. Okay, so if you look at the two pictures, the first one shows that the counselor is showing interest. I'd like to listen. I'm very interested in listening what you are saying. So these types of behavior actually give message to the client. Okay, for example, when we watch the children, when they are so interested in watching any movies from the TV, they usually face the TV screen and they look and they lean toward to the screen because they are so interested. So when we showed this type of posture to the client will recognize, oh, counselor is pretty interested in listening my words. So we want to, because we wanted to show we are listening by this body posture. The next one is eye contact, because eye is very important in communicating each other. So we want to interpret the client's message by making comfortable and direct eye contact. The final one is the relaxation. It's more relaxed. If you look at the, I a little bit exaggerated. When we showed some comfortable and when we help the client be more relaxed, that will be facilitating the relationship between counselor and client. So these are the suggestion by Gerald Egan when we work together with the client. If we are able to show these types of behavior, that will help the client speak out by showing effective nonverbal message and behavior. And I put additional one here is from Asian perspective. I wanted to revisit this Chinese character. Are you familiar with this Chinese character? This is, if I translate it into Korean, this is just listening, right? This is 들을 청, like a listening 청취, like this means 청. However, it was interesting when I look into each component of this particular Chinese letter. And for example, this letter composed many different parts. If you look at the first one, this, what does that mean? Right, this means ear. And that makes sense because we are listening by ear. But we don't want to, miss this active. So active listening is a little bit addition to the regular listening. That's why they put additional part here. If I make it bigger, what does it look like? This is I actually, okay? This is I of Chinese letter. It was a little bit, if you rotate in 90 degree, and this is the 눈목. That means even though it says listening, but when we listen, we listen not only ear, but also we listen by looking at their facial expression. So when Chinese coined this term, they knew this idea. When we listen by ear as well as eye. That means we want to catch their nonverbal message by looking at and watching them. The last one was more interesting to me. This is 마음심. That is, if I translate in English, that would be kind of do you remember empathy as one of the characteristics of effective counselor? So we want to listen by ear and eye, but also we wanted to show our empathic understanding to the client. That is the definition and meaning of active listening, and it was essentially integrated in Chinese letter. That was pretty interesting to me. So I wanted to introduce to you this Chinese letter explained very well the concept of active listening. Okay, the next one, so we talked about some nonverbal message as a part one. The second part is some verbal counseling skill. The first one is empathy and deep understanding. I explained a little bit by introducing one Chinese letter, the concept of empathy. And empathy was another concept. Do you remember that the Carl Rogers suggested 3 core conditions? Okay, let's recall what was the first one. The first one was the genuineness, okay, honesty and congruence. The second one was unconditional positive regard. We wanted to look at the client without preconception. Okay? The last one was the empathic understanding. And Kharkov was actually worked together with the Carl Rogers, and he developed the empathy concept in more detail in 5 different scales. So if we look at this one, from 1 to 5 and different level. And also if you look at the figure 5.1, our textbook illustrate and explain some example of the different level of empathy. The level 1 is the level that the counselor is not really understanding the client's word and feeling. And number 2 level is pretty just superficial level of understanding of client. Number 3, that is the about same level of understanding and empathy. So the level of counselor's understanding and the expression level of client is about the same. So they interchangeably they express and they understand. So back and forth way, that will be the level 3. And number 4, that is advanced level of empathy. So not only understanding from counselor's perspective, at the level 4, counselors show empathic understanding to the client. That message help the client to think about their own feelings and thought. That will help the client think about their own situation in a deeper way. That facilitate their understanding. That is level 4. And level 5 is the counselors some communication to the client, increase client's understanding in the deepest way. So Kharkov differentiated different level of empathy. We wanted to show higher level of empathy anyway. That would be more attitude. But paraphrasing and reflecting, that those are one of the basic counseling skill. The paraphrasing is to state with different words meaning same. And paraphrasing focus on some thought and content and fact. Let's take a look at this example. If we listen from the client, such as, I was nervous in the beginning of the semester because of English, for example, this class, but I'm getting better and it's pretty fun class. I feel made a good choice. I hope you feel the same way. I know, you may be nervous in the beginning because it's English class and you don't see your classmate in the offline classroom, and you have to be more independent in this class types of thing, pretty new settings and new system. But if we have a client who feel this way, I'm getting better and it's pretty fun class, I made a good choice. What would be the main themes and main thought and some fact from this statement? Because we wanted to state with the different words meaning the same. Do you have any ideas? I made some example of the paraphrase in this case. I developed, it sounds like you like the class, even though it is English class. That's pretty simple, right? And pretty easy. But even that simple and easy statement, when we paraphrase with the same words, different words meaning same, that message let the client feel, oh, my counselor is understanding me. Because the meaning of the paraphrase express counselor's understanding. That is the effectiveness of the paraphrasing. Okay? It's pretty simple, but we want to catch the keyword from the client statement, and we just want to paraphrase. Okay? That was the basic skill. But reflecting is a little bit different. Paraphrasing focus on the content and theme and thought, but the reflecting focus on the client's feeling. So think about, what do you see the major feeling from this client statement? Any major feeling from this statement? Well, the example that I generated was, it sounds like you are feeling much more comfortable compared to the beginning of the semester. You can generate other example of a reflection, but paraphrasing and reflection and this type of skills help the client clarify what they feel. It's like peeling off the onion. Okay? When we reflect and when we paraphrase well, the client, they peel off their kind of onion skin, so they are able to go into the deeper level of their the core emotion. The silence, that's I would say that is a kind of advanced one, because sometimes we have a silence, but there are two different silence. The first one is intentional silence. If I feel the client is trying to tell something, and if the client is very active in expressing themselves, I want to be more silent because I want to give more opportunity to express themselves. So that would be intentional silence, but sometimes we confront some awkward silence. We don't want to have many awkward silence because that really impact on the relationship between counselor and client, but we want to increase intentional silence. And also, we don't really have to worry about awkward silence too much, because when we had a kind of awkward pause, sometimes counselor think by themselves, oh, we have a silence, it's a little bit awkward, and probably client may regard me insufficient and not really professional. But the research identified the opposite. The counselors interpret the awkward silence in that way, but during that moment, even that awkward silence, the client tended to think about their own issue. They're still using that silence time for reflecting their own feelings and thoughts. So we don't have to worry too much about it. So the silence, that's on one of the skills that we want to use intentionally. The questioning, we use lots of questions during the counseling session. For example, I was nervous in the beginning of the semester, but even the client said it's pretty fun. Well, we want to clarify what was fun. What was the fun in your class? So that would be an open question. So we want to get more information from the client. So we can use open and closed question. Open question is the question starting with who and what and why and types of how. So we can get lots of information. But closed question is the question that asks just yes and no in order to clarify the client statement. Self-disclosure, that's another skills that we can use in counseling. Sometimes we share as a counselor our own experience to let the client feel much more comfortable. For example, like in this case, well, you know what? I also took some English class before, and I felt the same way. I was pretty nervous in the beginning, but as semester goes on, I felt much better. So we can share as a counselor our own experience as well. Modeling, that's another techniques, because when we work together with the client always observe the counselor. They always look at us, and they are very sensitive how we are reacting to the symptom, what they are saying. So the first one in adverb turn, that is some unconsciousness modeling. Sometimes it's really hard to control because they just observe us. However, intentional modeling, we can suggest some different way. The textbook introduced 3 different modeling ways. The first one, we can show specific behavior as a counselor or as a role model. So we can display some specific behavior. That's one of the intentional modeling. We can also play activity even in the session, like a role play and role rehearsal. Okay, I would act as you, and you would act as your father. Okay, let's role play. So that will be another intentional modeling. Also, we can ask a client to search for any good role model in their lives. So that's additional, another intentional modeling. And next, the counseling skills in offering information and providing alternative and giving advice. And if you look at if you see the figure 5.2, that it shows that some spectrum. If you look at the left side is a safer way because offering alternative is a little bit tentative suggestion, right? So it is non-judgmental and more client-centered. It could foster client self-sufficiency. However, if we give information giving, or if we provide advice, that will be more directive. Okay, so that could be judgmental and is more helper or counselor-centered, and it might foster client dependency because they want to get some solution from the counselor. So offering information, providing alternative, giving advice is not typical intervention as a counselor, but sometimes they are necessary. But we wanted to be careful in using this type of method because it might foster dependency and it might be the answer from counselor perspective. And confrontation, sometimes we identify discrepancy of the client, like a difference. like incongruent. For example, clients, for example, if the client is saying pretty sad story, but if we identify the client's face doesn't show negative feeling, we see the discrepancy, we see the difference and incongruence, and we can ask, well, you are saying pretty sad story, and I feel the same way, but I don't really that sad feeling from your face. That is a confrontation. But we have to be careful in using, because that confrontation may increase client resistance, because that is more confrontational. Interpretation, that is the we want to analyze the client statement from counselor's perspective in a deeper way. And also we want to maintain the collaborative relationship. Do you remember that therapeutic alliance is one of the key factors in counseling effectiveness? So we still want to use that, the concept and skill. So we talked about the counseling skill so far. The final slide shows the stage of counseling relationship. I put down 5 different stages here, and usually it starts from stage 1, but it depends on the situation. For example, if we have already built a good therapeutic alliance with client, we don't have to start from stage 1. However, this is the typical stage in counseling relationship. The stage 1 is the stage 1 here is the rapport. That is a therapeutic and helping relationship between counselor and client. That's always important as a therapeutic alliance. So before exploring client problem, we want to build strong and good and authentic relationship with the client. That is the number 1. If you feel you are successful in building that relationship, then we could move forward to the next step. Next step is a problem identification. We want to know what was the problem. We want to know the origin of the problem. That is step 2. But step 2, we have a tendency to explore their problem that is more some negative perspective. But I encourage you to think about some positive things of the client at the stage 2. So not only asking how severe was the problem, when did the problem start. So that type of question is the one side, but we also want to ask them questions asking their potential, their strengths, and also their support system and their resources. So that will be a good foundation for the next step as well. So that so keep in mind that even problem identification stage, we want to explore in a balanced way. Stage 3 is a goal setting. Okay, what do you want? Okay, do you remember the William Glasser's WDEP system? The first W means want. What they want from the relationship, client is saying their problem, but based on that exploration, we want to reach what they really want. That is the stage 3 goal setting. Number 4, but there is a goal there, but if there is a goal here, for example, let me make some example. Okay, if I have a client who wanted to study abroad after graduation. Okay, so the client goal is to study abroad for getting a master's degree. Okay, that is the goal. But next step is there are so many different ways to reach there. Intervention 1, intervention 2, there are so many different ways. Exploring a variety of interventions and strategies to reach the goal is the stage 4, developing intervention. For example, if we want to study abroad, we have to get acceptance from the schools in the for example, United States, and then we have to show our English proficiency. We have to show some TOEFL score and GRE score and some communication skill. So if we want to, achieve the goal, we have to develop that skill. And how can we develop the skill? There are so many different ways. We can ask a client, okay, what have you done so far? That is some problem identification and, exploring some positive one. Okay, you have even taken some English class like this, and you have already took a test in TOEFL before, and the score was not too bad, and you are planning, and your communication level is not really bad. So based on that, what would be the next level? How could you reach to that goal? That is the stage 4. And then we encourage as a counselor the client to explore many different ways. And when they implement their intervention, we provide lots of positive feedback. We give lots of provide the confidence to the client. And if they reach the goal, and then we can think about the final stage at the termination. And even after finish the counseling relationship, we want to check how they are doing as a follow-up. So I showed that the 5 different stages in the counseling. So today we talked about the counseling skill. Okay, if I summarize again, counseling skill has 2 different components. The more component actually is non-verbal components. We learned the solar system by Jared Egan. We also learn by exploring one Chinese character, and we try to learn some concept of active listening. We also learn many different basic and advanced counseling skills, like reflection and paraphrasing, questioning and summarizing and confrontation types of thing. And finally, we learn some different stage in counseling. So when we meet the client, we want to make a good relationship first, and then we want to identify the problem, and then we want to develop the goal, and then we want to develop strategies and intervention. And then if we believe and if client agree, the achievement of the counseling, and then we can think about and terminate the session, and we can provide the follow-up for the client. So now we learn the counseling skills in counseling world, and next week we'll talk about some different approach. This is more individualistic perspective. Next week we will talk about group approach. Okay, I hope you enjoy this class. If you have any question, please post your question to the cyber campus. Okay, see you.